Welcome to day 2 of Beauty Tech Live. We have a great lineup of speakers today covering a range of different subjects, from the role of stores in today's digital world and DTC strategies to building online communities and how to better use short video platform TikTok. Before that, this morning we will kick off the second day by talking about fragrance. Javier, thank you for being with us here today. We're very pleased to have you, and we're looking forward to some insights on the fragrance market and selling fragrance through e-commerce.
Thank you, Una. Very pleased to be with you today.
I just want to start by what has gone on recently in the past year or so with the digital acceleration we've seen as a result of COVID. What have you learned over the past year in terms of selling fragrance online?
Well, definitely 2020 has been a year of learnings. I would say that the first thing we learned is the online penetration. That, as you mentioned, we projected it to be 25% by 2025. But what happened, according to the information we have for prestige fragrances, is that it went from 12-13% back in 2019 to 24% last year. So that was already meeting the projections we did for 2025. So when people say that it was 5 years in one, we tend to agree with that statement. What I think is interesting is that half of that growth came from the fact that stores were locked down. But what we are seeing the beginning of 21 is that this online penetration is consolidating. So we tend to think that this will become even more relevant in the years to come. Another thing we learned is which have been the players that have been performing proportionally better. And I would say that we saw an exponential growth of our own e-commerce. But then when you take e-tailing, marketplaces, pure players, or omni-channel players, those who have brick and mortar as well as e-commerce, what we saw is that the omni-channel players perform better proportionally. And we think that that was due to the fact that consumers who were forced to buy online went to their trusted partner. Maybe another learning is the fact that we had to realize that it's about an omni-channel shopping journey, and that it's very relevant to understand that it's not online against offline, but it's how you amplify both of them. And we did things that we were forced to do. I remember a phrase that someone in our teams was saying, like, online is lifeline. So we took our BAs in the stores and they were doing online consultation. And that was really a very interesting learning that we are implementing going forward. And maybe the last point, and I will close that question, would be a cultural shift. You know that we have brands, we have a DTC model, so they are very used to retail business. But many other brands were relying on a more wholesale business model. And what we saw is that online is an always-on reality, and you have to be permanently on top of it. It's a retail business, so it changes very much the way you approach and you operate. Those were maybe the key learnings for us last year.
Okay, so there's a lot there. I'm going to come back to you on several of those points. Just in terms then of the share of online. So you said you've already reached the 2025 level there. Do you see a maturation point for the online channel in the fragrance market? Do you see, for example, it reaching perhaps 30%, and then after that it will stay at that level? Or can you see a lot more growth and it's, online taking a much bigger share of the fragrance market eventually?
Well, it's difficult to venture into projections, having seen what has happened recently. But what we think is that 25%, which we projected for 25, was already the case last year. We thought that it was going to go down and then go up again. I would say that we tend to think that this percentage will be quite higher. And the reasons why this will be quite higher is because that consumption behaviors tend to take a long time to change, but shopping behaviors change much more rapidly. And we think that consumers who have broken I would say, let's say the sphere of buying online will not go back, and they will continue buying online. Plus the investments that both retailers and brands are putting in place in order to improve the e-commerce experience is going to push even more consumers to buy online. Also, the geographical footprint will have an impact on that. So if you think of China, a market in which we are seeing our perfume brands, let's say, growing exponentially, China is projected to be a very relevant market, a top market in the years to come. And due to the fact that it has a very high online penetration, this will also push let's say, the global online weight much higher. And the last point that I was thinking of is travel retail. So travel retail will come back. The question is it going to come back the same way it was before, or is it going to come back embracing digital, which was probably not so much the case for the industry before? So we think that with all those factors, the percentage of online will be much higher. Having said this, still for perfumery, physical stores will continue to be very relevant.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because obviously you've outlined there the importance of omni-channel. But obviously the increase in online sales is having an impact nonetheless on the brick and mortar retails. I mean, we've seen it in the UK. It's been something that's been going on for quite a long time. In the US as well, there have been a number of store closures. Douglas in Europe has also announced a number of store closures between now and 2022. How do you see the impact of online sales on the brick and mortar store? And perhaps how do you see also the role of the retail store changing as a result?
Well, we think that the role has to evolve. Clearly, online, what it provides, is convenience. So, and the fact that online, in our projections, will continue growing, forces retailers and brands to redefine the role of the stores. They have to become much more experiential. They need to be elevated. If they rely on a transactional approach, they will lose the race to online. And I think what's important is, as you mentioned, is this omni-channel approach to that. It's not online against offline, is what's the role of the stores and how this amplifies the entire shopper journey. How can we improve that? I think shoppers will go to the stores if there is a reason to go there. And for us, the experience is very relevant. And experience, it can be educational, it can be fun, it can be entertaining, it can be aesthetic. What it cannot be is just transactional, because then there is no point to go to the stores. We will partner with retailers in order to make this happen. And we are working with technologies and ways to express the brands. In the past, it was called retailtainment, but this needs to be enhanced in order to improve and elevate the role of physical stores.
Can you see, though, more store closures? Can you see that happening? It's kind of a natural evolution, I imagine, that shift in the market with digital. Can you see the footprint, the brick and mortar footprint becoming considerably reduced, though?
The straightforward answer is yes. No, basically, what COVID has done is accelerating underlying dynamics. And we saw stores closing steadily year after year, but this huge acceleration of online has not been, let's say, a net growth for the industry. Basically, in many markets, it has been at the expense of offline network. And this will make some of the doors unproductive. This will force some door closures. Again, brands and retailers are investing in improving the experience online. So this shift towards more online will also make some of the doors, if they also do not transform themselves, less relevant. Shopping behaviors are changing. And lastly, I think for brands, what we are doing is also shifting investments from offline to online. Offline will continue to be very relevant. And for perfumery, it's key because no one has cracked the formula of smelling online. So we rely on stores to play that part of the journey. We think it's very, very relevant. We will continue investing there, but it is true that part of the investment will shift online. So in the less relevant doors, there will be no animation and less focus from brands and retailers. And this will accelerate these underlying dynamics.
Okay. And just there in terms of the e-commerce side of the business, the online side of the business there, I mean, there are so many different formats today for selling online, and it seems that they're multiplying almost by the week. There's social commerce, there's the branded sites, you mentioned D2C, there's marketplaces. I mean, which of those formats do you think are best adapted to selling the fragrance category?
I would say, we are a multi-brand portfolio company with brands that range from ultra premium like Penhaligon's, L'Artisan Parfumeur, or Christian Louboutin, to prestige brands like Paco Rabanne, Carolina Herrera, or Jean Paul Gaultier, to local heroes like Kama in India. So I think it depends on the brand strategy. If you take niche, for instance, if you want to provide that very special treatment, that very personalized connection to consumers, then e-commerce is the cornerstone of that strategy online. And that's what we are doing, and we see amazing results in that area. The same happens with prestige brands, but if you take about materiality, the size of the business here, e-tailing is more relevant. And here players like omni-channel players, pure players, marketplaces, and even we start social commerce, as you were mentioning, is relevant. What I would say here is that it's not about one or the other. What we think it's more important is who understands how to add value to consumers, and who allows the brands to express themselves and to keep building brand equity. That for us is the most relevant thing. And we partner with those who allow us to do that exercise. Otherwise, if it's transactional and purely value, we think it's missing the point.
Okay, and just on that point of the consumer and also about being transactional and purely value, do you think it's a different type of consumer who is buying online than the one who's buying in a store? I'm just thinking, because of the number of fragrances that we can find discounted online today, you kind of wonder what's the motivation to go to a store to buy a fragrance if I know I can find it very easily online at quite a steep discount? Is it a different consumer there, or how do you see that?
Well, from the consumer intelligence we have, we know that the major part of consumers, and I'm talking generally and not country specific, are omni-channel consumers. So it's not people who go rather to the stores or just buy online. No, people want to go to the stores. They want to test the fragrances. They want to get it immediately. They are just passing by and they want to buy. So we think it's mostly omni-channel consumers. If you say why should people go to the stores if they can find a cheaper offer online? What we saw during COVID, and I think that's very interesting, is that people who moved to online did not go to the cheapest offer. They went to the trusted retailer. And I think the relationship and the trust that brands and retailers build with consumers is very, very relevant. It's not everything about price. It's about what kind of service, what kind of connection, what kind of loyalty programs do you have. That's where we need to focus on. And another relevant point is when you take young consumers, they like to buy from the brand directly. They like to have that connection, and our brands are working hard on understanding who is their consumer base, connecting with them, talking with them. And we think that's something that we see more and more. It's this, how do you manage your community? So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because also there's this issue of standing out online. I mean, as I said, there's so many places where you can buy, and there are so many fragrances available there. It's becoming increasingly difficult to stand out online. How can you make your offer distinguish it in an e-commerce world there?
Part of our online strategy is what we call mastering the omni-channel connection and conversion of consumers. For us, what's important is that brands understand who is their consumers, what's their shopping journeys, which are the touch points. And every touch point is an opportunity to add or to destroy value in front of consumers. If you as a brand understand which are the key touch points for my brand, how can I add value in that moment? How can I make it spiky? How can I have a competitive advantage in that moment? That's part of your strategy. And then what can I say? Puig is a company that it's known for creativity, disruption, and we have amazing teams who are provoking in terms of product development, in terms of content. No, let me give you an example. We learned recently that in Google search, the most searched male fragrance is Paco Rabanne 1 Million, and the female fragrance with the highest acceleration is Carolina Herrera Good Girl. So that's a way to create interest in consumers and to stand out. And then when it comes to conversion, so when consumers finally go to a platform, be it your own platform or in a retailer's platform, then what I would say it's fix your basics. This is about execution a lot, no? So we call it brilliant basics. And I heard some time ago someone that was saying execution is sexy, and I tend to agree. So you need to make sure that in terms of share of search, visibility, product availability, ratings and reviews, that really all those things are met in order to be able to stand out. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Is it becoming more expensive to do that today? It's just we're hearing about, for example, Google and some of the big tech players also having, you multiply by 3 in some cases, how much it costs for search and etc. online. Is it becoming much more expensive too?
Well, I think that it's very clear that there will be a fight on traffic and visibility, and it's going to be more expensive, and it's going to be, but it's a natural game, no? So if there is more demand, prices will go up. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to move on and ask you a little bit about how consumers purchase also, because in the store, there's obviously the opportunity for impulse purchases that perhaps is less obvious in an online environment. Perhaps online you may be going to buy a gift, you may be going to buy a fragrance you already know, it's a repurchase. Do you think there's a risk of missing out on those purchase or those impulse purchases?
Well, yeah, what I would say first, understanding the consumer and putting a little bit in perspective, you know that there are 3 missions, no? It's rather replenishment or gifting or trial. And what we know is that in our industry, I guess in many others, it's quite a planned purchase. So it's not that people go to this like this and they buy. It's impulse is like 20-25%, but it's rather planned. Having said this, what we think it's important is that you make it easy for consumers. So how can you make the path to purchase more seamless, faster? So if they have too many clicks in order to buy, that's not going to happen. Social commerce, I think it's very interesting when you see what's happening in China with live streaming. It's a very immediate way to see something that interests you and then guide you to the purchase. And something that it's also important is how can you reduce the fear of mistake? And that's something that it can be through consultation. It can be with specific formats. It can be with a try before you buy. So there are many ways to make sure that that you can improve impulse buying. And at the same time, I come back to the brilliant basics. Make sure that your brilliant basics are fixed, and then things will happen.
But is it difficult though to encourage that discovery process? For example, do you see online being perhaps mainly for those gifting periods, for example, Valentine's Day, Black Friday, etc., or can you see it also for discovery? I'm just wondering how you can perhaps encourage the purchase of new fragrances through e-commerce, fragrances that you've just launched that people may not be aware of before or haven't smelled before, for example.
Well, clearly, when we compare the purchasing patterns online and offline, what we see is that online, you have a higher percentage of gifting and replenishment and lower of trial. That's very clear, because the industry has not yet fixed the issue of trial of smelling fragrances online. No, that's very clear. One of the things we have done, and you were mentioning at the beginning, we have developed a fragrance profiler, which it's a proprietary technology, something in which we have spent several years. And basically what this profiler does is a combination of the largest perfume database with amazing images on ingredients with keywords. So you cannot smell, but it's the closest approach to being able to smell through images and words. And basically what consumers can do then is to have their own olfactive profile. This is amazing because what can you do with this profile? You can, for retailers, it gives you the opportunity to do much more targeted sampling. For consumers, you can share it with your friends so that they make sure if they make you a gift that it will be the right one. And we have been implementing these in our own websites and also with some retail partners. And the results have been amazing in terms of conversion and engagement and average transaction value. So we think that, yes, gifting and replenishment is much higher than trial. The industry has not yet found the right solution to that. We have found a technology that is very strong. But if someone finds a device that helps you smell through the phone, please let us know. We would be very interested.
Okay. Apart from that technology, which is very interesting, just in terms of consumer profiles, etc. Is there anything that you're doing also in terms of sampling sets, discovery sets? It's something that we've seen for some time. Is there any new take that you have on that, or how is that working? Is that something that you will focus on as well?
We will definitely focus on, and we are focusing on. What I can tell you is that we are trying different strategies, top of the funnel with sampling through social media, targeted sampling through retailers. We are doing the try before you buy sampling kits, everything. We think it's extremely important because we know that 85% of consumers who buy have tried the fragrance before, and they rely very much on the physical stores nowadays on sampling, and we need to fix that if we want to make that pain point in online being solved. I can tell you we are at the beginning of the learning curve. There is much more to go.
Yeah. Okay. And you've mentioned there several times about execution and how that is so important. There's also that importance of delivering a premium experience. And I'm not just talking about the actual discovery or the purchase online, but also in terms of the logistics, in terms of delivery. It can be quite difficult to deliver that, especially when we're up against companies like Amazon who do it so well, for example. How can you do that? How can you ensure that very premium experience from A to Z, from when the consumer gets the product, goes online, to when they get the product at home in the box? And do you think there's a need also perhaps to control more of that logistics side of things as well for e-commerce?
Say definitely yes. So if you buy yourself a premium product, a luxury product, what you expect is that the entire experience is right from the purchase to delivery to unpacking. Everything has to be right, and this is putting a lot of pressure on our operations teams because the customer service as well as all the shipping has to be right. And you're right, the bar is very high. People expect it to be same day delivery or next day delivery. Just to give you an example, what we observed in some markets is that the last days of Christmas, online sales were going down. Why? Because consumers did not rely on the ability of retailers or brands to ship on time, and they didn't want to miss the moment of the gift. So that's something that tells you how relevant it is for consumers. And yes, we will have to be focusing on that. We do so.
Does that mean, we've seen in some other countries, for example, e-commerce companies taking a share in delivery companies, or engaging in deeper partnerships with companies that are focused on logistics? Is that something also that you would look at? Or?
Well, I don't think Puig will do it directly, but what I'm sure is that any retailer or any company which is involved in logistics will make sure they have that kind of ability. Otherwise, they will not be competitive. Okay.
I just want to ask you one last question about how you see the BA selling online as well, because you mentioned at the beginning that there's an opportunity there through online tools to better communicate with the consumers. For example, we've seen a lot of live streams that have been done by BAs, different tutorials, etc. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those initiatives and how you see that perhaps progressing in terms of the service element that you can provide there through e-commerce?
Yes, what we did last year was doing this virtual consultation, and it was proving very interesting. At the same time, one of the areas we're working on is how can you empower the BAs through technology? So it's the profiler, for instance, or another technology we have developed, which is Air Parfum, which also fixes one of the pain points of consumers, which is the saturation. So you can smell 4 or 5 fragrances, but then the alcohol saturates your nostrils. So we are using those technologies in order to enhance the ability of our BAs to connect with consumers and elevate that experience. So we think that we will see in the coming years, and I think we are scratching the surface, much more of empowered BAs working online and offline, using technology in order to elevate that experience with the profiler, with Air Parfum, with information they are getting on their tablets and so on. So I think they play a key role. People go to the stores to have an elevated experience, a personal experience, and we see this connecting much more omni-channel than it was in the past.
Okay, that's great, Javier. Thank you very much for those insights and for sharing your knowledge on selling online and experiencing fragrance online. Thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure. Bye.
We will take a short break, but do join us at 11 a.m. CET when we will be talking to Adrien Geiger from L'Occitane about the role of the store in digital business. Before that, do take a tour of the exhibition hub to see the latest products and services on show from our exhibitors. See you at 11.